the talking. And
Sorry.
then there are people like, oh, Patrick Mickelberry that sit there quietly and patiently. And what you have to do as a facilitator is balance that out. And we're going to be talking about that. Usually the Pat Mickelberries have something more important to say. So your job is to facilitate that discussion is very important. So we're just spending a half hour on each, right, Amy? We're just going to whip
Yeah,
you
yeah.
right
Well,
through.
it's I really believe in organic sort of process. So I have a template, and then you all will shape how this training goes. That's part of why I'm recording it, so that in case there's little nuggets that I can use for the next session, because we're going to do two of these sessions. And just piggybacking on what Chris said, I think what assistant governors do is so important. You all have probably heard me say this, that I think it's the best job in Rotary and one of the most important jobs. And Chris's job as governor elect is really to get everybody ready to lead as presidents elect. And there's no way that a governor elect could do that by themselves. They really need a team. And so you're the essential element to that. And a lot of people think they have the understanding about how adults learn, and it's just really good to review it because it will surprise you when you get into situations with them trying to help them get information, and you will think that it goes one way and it will be reported back to you completely different. So it's really important that we spend some time thinking about intentionally how we facilitate those discussions. And then what Chris said about getting them ready to access the Learning Center and getting questions, I think that was one of the biggest takeaways from my year as governor-elect, was how many people never really logged into My Rotary or DACdb prior to their year as president. And even in the middle of their president-elect year, still hadn't done that, had login informations and access issues and things like that, and how much facilitation of that Joe and I really did together. And we did several sessions with we had people sign up and just said, come to a session and we will answer your specific questions. And Zoom is a great tool for that because you can share screens. So they can share their screen with you. If you're the host and you give them permission, you can share your screen and show them what you're seeing, but you can also see what they see. And you'd be surprised. Some people are not using PCs. They're using their tablets or their phones to connect to meetings. And so it looks different. And so they may be having challenges that help you when you can look at the screen. So that was an important thing. So I'm going to share my screen, speaking of sharing screens, and just get us started. My intention is to talk a little bit about how adults learn and adult learning theory. I think you all probably know that I was an educator before I got into the social work element of education. And so teaching is my training and what I enjoyed doing for a long time. Adult learning is different than how I was trained to teach students. So I still am learning things about adult learners, especially aging adult learners. That's a new area for me, and how much time I really spend trying to remember things and develop tools to help me remember things that I can't get in my brain in the same way I once did. So I hope that you will feel comfortable interrupting with questions or comments. And, Zoom is tricky. I may not see it because of the PowerPoints and things. So feel free to use your voice if I don't recognize a gesture on the screen or your hands going up, okay? Any questions before we jump in? All right, so let's share. You should be seeing something that says Assistant Governor Training, Preparing Presidents-Elect. All right, I'm seeing some thumbs up. All right, well, let's get going. So our goal is to talk about principles of adult learning, some effective facilitation techniques, and how you can engage your presidents-elect. And then we're going to jump into the online tools specifically. I'm hearing some music somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about principles of adult learning. So adults are more self-directed. This is going to be complicated and wonderful. So the motivation is intrinsic for adult learners versus students in classrooms and elementary and middle and high schools, maybe even college classrooms, I could dare to say a little bit, where you are being motivated by grades and things like that that are external motivators. Adults are wanting to learn for something that is intrinsic within them, or you're asking them to learn something related to something they want to do. And so you can really build on that. The other challenge with that, on the other hand, is that sometimes it's like herding cats. So it's important to remember that you don't have to manage them every step of the way. In fact, it's better if you don't most of the time. I find that adults are more responsive when they feel in charge of themselves. So just remember that they like to self-direct themselves for the most part, and having a clear beginning and end goal is helpful, but sometimes having flexibility about how they get there is really important. Adults bring prior experience to the learning process, and that's a really big strength because they have experiential knowledge that they can apply. And when you are doing training and when you are talking with adult learners, it's really important to bring that to bear because it helps them build connections in their neural pathways to what they've experienced. Also, you will find over and over again that there are things that they have experienced that will add to what you're trying to teach 9 times out of 10. There is sometimes the 1 time out of 10 where it could be a distraction and where someone is spending a lot of time in their experience and not so much with the content. And so as a facilitator of learning, you may have to pull them back in, or put their topic in a parking lot for later is a great strategy facilitators use. Adults tend to be goal-oriented and need immediate relevance. They don't want their time to be wasted, especially among Rotarians who are very busy people for the most part. And we want to get the most for our value for our time, and we often see it as our most precious resource. Learning can be more problem-centered, not subject-centered. And so it's easier for adults to wrap their heads around concepts if they can see a specific example. Sometimes if we're very abstract and just talking about a general subject, they can get lost in that minutia. So coming back to the room for real-world examples is often really useful when you're talking to adults. Also, remember what I said at the beginning, that they are intrinsically motivated. That's the internal motivation that they have. So they want to learn something, they want to be better at it, or they want to be a good leader. They want to help presidents, for example, be successful like you all do. So that's your motivation for giving me an hour in the middle of your morning to learn this kind of thing. So you have to remember what the motivation is so that you can help use that to engage them. And what are the implications for you as assistant governors around this? Well, they're going to need that practical real world application of the concepts. So, most of the people aren't using DACdb because they haven't felt the urge to, and that's a misstep on the part of clubs. Clubs could use DACdb and do use DACdb often. Our club uses it. It's how our newsletter and calendar get generated. Some clubs do different things, and so folks maybe have never utilized it. I think if you're a foundation chair or somebody who's at all motivated by the giving that folks do in Rotary, you should be very comfortable with Rotary Club Central and helping people connect to My Rotary because they can manage their giving there, and they do manage their giving there. So that's a great tool for you. And if folks are never logging in, then they're dependent on a third person or a third party to do that giving, and they're not in charge of it, and they can't add to it easily. They have to go through somebody to do it. And that's fine. If that works for people, it's fine, but they're missing out on an opportunity. You should leverage the experience of your members when you're doing training and teaching. And we'll talk more about that throughout this whole experience. Really, your experience with your clubs is going to be key in helping other assistant governors learn. And so I'll expect that you share and comment, but likewise, we should be always doing that with the other adults in the room. The learning should be relevant to the needs of Rotary clubs. If you're not connecting it back, if we don't make that connection, it just becomes a not useful tool. And facilitation should focus on guiding discussions and not delivering lectures. This is hard for us because oftentimes we have a lot of information we want to share, and it's easier just to get up at the front of the room and talk.
Yeah.
And we're going to be asking you as assistant governors all the time from the district leadership to be sharing information from the district and international levels. Zone also, I forgot that middle step. Those three levels need to come back down to the club level. And there's so much information that you're one of the main conduits. Likewise, bringing that information from them back up to the district level is really key. So it's important that we really make those strong connections about the specific nature of Rotary. And then and not really hanging out in the front of the room, right? We talk a lot about servant leadership, but I think if folks think about it from leading from the back of the room, where you're really facilitating them to have conversations and you're guiding maybe to the objective or shaping it to the objective, but you're really letting them be the leaders that they are and have their own discussions. For guiding the learning process, the key strategies I would have for you is to really use active listening. And, that means that when you are listening to folks who are speaking, you're fully present in what they're saying, not thinking about the next thing you're going to say. And that's one of the biggest struggles for listening in most people I've ever done conflict resolution for or social work for. Someone is saying something to you and you're already thinking about your response. And so practicing active listening is a really important strategy to build in your strength as a facilitator. And then often people know you're actively listening by how you participate in the discussion. So nodding, using nonverbal cues that let them know if you're hearing them, using your body language. That's something not everybody thinks about these days, but having an open body. I just heard someone describing someone in an affirmation training circle thing I was doing, and she said, I always feel like I have her complete attention because she listens with her whole body. She turns her body towards me and I know I have her attention and I just feel so heard. And I thought that's really remarkable that someone is that good at active listening. And then often we repeat back what we're hearing. Sometimes that's a great way to check for understanding, but also lets people know that you're really paying attention. You want to encourage participation, and this can be tricky when you have group dynamics, especially among volunteers, right? No one's paid to be here. We don't have to participate in the discussion if we don't want to. And so if you are on the shyer end of the spectrum or less verbal, you may not participate. And Chris was saying this very well earlier, that the Chris's and Amy's of the room will tend to fill the space. So as a facilitator, we have to use strategies to help create opportunities to check in, but doing it in a way that doesn't alienate folks. So if I put somebody on the spot, so I said, Tim, I haven't heard from you. I need to know that I can try that. I need to pay attention to how Tim responds to that, because I could drive Tim away, or I could encourage participation. I need to be paying attention to what happens when I invite that participation. The other thing that I think is important when you're facilitating groups and guiding group discussions is to allow for quiet air. Dead air used to be like, don't do it, it's bad. No, in learning, it's very important. People will tend to fill the space. So, you can say things like, let's hear from someone we haven't heard from before, and then just let it hang and count. I have to count because otherwise I'll try to rush it and fill the space. But you'll be surprised, even the most reticent folks will sometimes get uncomfortable with that dead air and will eventually comment. So using open-ended questions is one really key strategy when you're leading a group. So instead of coming in and saying, we're hearing a lot of concerns about a specific issue, say, has anybody been hearing anything about this? And then letting them comment. I think as a leader, it's good to have a plan of where you want to go, but to be that organic facilitator of the conversation.
Amy?
Yes, go ahead.
I've found it helpful, instead of saying, has anybody heard anything about this, which is a closed-ended question. So if the answer is no,
say yes or no.
they're still quiet.
Yeah.
So what have you heard?
Yeah.
is a more open-ended question because they can still say nothing, but it's a
That's
little
true.
more open-ended and gets a. The other thing that I've found when I'm trying to get the quiet people to speak, and that silence thing is, I have to count too, Amy. But Patrick, would you be willing to contribute your thoughts on what we've talked about so far? Would you be willing to contribute? Most silent people are at least willing. They just need to be invited. So I've found that helpful with the Patricks and the Eds. Um, Tim, I don't think you're as introverted as maybe some other people might be, but you're going to have both in your groups. And the other thing you can do before I turn it back over to Amy, because here I go talking, is break them into groups of two and have them talk. So if they're shy by themselves, then as twosomes, then they're more likely to share in that discussion. Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm going to get to that because you're really
Okay.
talking about specific strategy, and that's great. And
Okay.
Chris's point was true. I did ask a close-ended question. Um, the other strategy someone has used that I really liked was when you're introducing a concept or you're starting the discussion off to say, what do you know or what comes to mind when you hear? Because
Mhm.
sometimes people will be afraid to commit to knowledge because they're in a situation where they're going to be receiving learning. And so is this a trick? Or, sometimes when someone says, what do you know? They're going to tell you everything you didn't know. And that doesn't feel comfortable. So if someone says, what do you know? What comes to mind? What do you think of when you hear the words facilitation? Then you're more likely to comment on what you think. And it doesn't mean that you know all the answers, but this is what comes to mind when someone mentions facilitation. And that helps you also read your room and know sort of what the learning or knowledge level in your room is. And you can sometimes see gaps, or I can see like Joe really knows a lot about facilitation. And so I'm gonna tap on Joe when I need somebody who can contribute something uh, specific to what I'm looking for, right? And then to create an interactive environment. So allowing opportunities for people to talk and playing on what they say. And you're hearing Chris and I both use a strategy around using people's names. And that's a way to engage your room, to specifically say the people that are in, especially on Zoom, when we can't always see everybody, and you're maybe not getting the same kind of group dynamic or energy you might get from an in-person group. And then you'll see on the graphic where we say the answer is in the room. We say that in Rotary all the time, but that's true. There are so much expertise in the members, and Rotarians are leaders with all kinds of skill sets that they bring that can be applied to almost every topic that comes up. So don't be afraid to ask them what their best thinking is about something or what they know about something, because they will help each other. And you can build on or gently correct if they have a thinking error or they're misinformed about something. Any questions about that? Any comments? I
Amy.
yes.
Yeah, just I I appreciate the points that are being made by both you and Chris. I think you're right on. I think that as a facilitator, it's not an easy thing to draw out, especially a group of people you don't know very well.
Yeah.
But I think it's even harder to draw sometimes some of those quiet people in the room that you know very well.
Yeah.
But I think your strategies are right on.
Thank you. We're gonna next talk about specific facilitation strategies, and I think you're hitting on something, Ed, that I think is most important. I've been studying this new training curriculum, and the trainer and developer of the curriculum says regularly, connection before content, connection before content. And so know your team, know your people. You're going to be meeting with them monthly, probably, if not more frequently, depending on what's happening in your area or within the district. You're going to get to interact with these people a lot. And sometimes for 2 years, right? When they come in as PEs and then during their presidencies, you're going to have a relationship. You're going to get to know who they are and how they function in groups. And so you may need to change your strategies up to meet the group dynamics as they evolve. And for example, when I was an assistant governor, I jumped into the middle of a term for somebody who had to vacate. And so they had a structure in place. But when we added the presidents-elect halfway through the year, we had to completely change the way we met because that additional group learned differently or interacted differently, and it just didn't work right. So we had to switch things around to fit the changing dynamics. So I was a parent of 3 daughters, and what worked for my oldest daughter does not work for my youngest daughter. So I just always keep that in mind. People learn differently. They need different things to participate and show up and be a part of the learning. So specific facilitation strategies can be broken up into some key categories. The active learning, this is something when we talk about a facilitative model, this is what we're often talking about, using some of these tools to put the power in their hands. Because remember what we said about adult learners, they like to be intrinsically motivated and are self-directed. So using case studies, role plays, and hands-on exercises, there's some great strategies. Although I tend to avoid role plays a lot, I never call them role plays. I'll call them practice. I'll call them other things because often, especially in social work, when people are introduced with the opportunity to do a role play, they'll play the worst version or the most interesting version of a character, not what most people are experiencing. And so giving them some parameters for that is important, but it's the practice, right? And Chris was talking about a specific strategy that we call think, pair, and share. And so we ask people to take a couple minutes and think about something, and then we pair them up and let them talk about something, and then we have them report back what they've learned. And that's a great way to get people talking because it's much less invasive to talk to one person or 2 people than it is to the whole group. And so often folks who are reticent will start contributing. It also changes the energy in a room. If you have a sluggish room or a sluggish group, to get them talking raises the energy. They'll start talking a little bit louder. They'll get a little more animated because other people's energy will start feeding them. So it's a great way to oh man, we're starting to fall asleep after lunch. Let's break the group up and let them do some discussion. The other piece to remember about that is that it can sometimes get away from you. Always budget more time than you have planned for that, because bringing Rotarians back together is one of the biggest challenges. We like to talk to each other. Those group discussions, really, the popcorn or brainstorm, we really embody that a lot in our teaching that we do as Rotarians in our RLI and in the other trainings we do, where we allow people to contribute. And there's no wrong answer. And sometimes you'll put things in the parking lot, or let's come back to that another time. That seems like a topic for another time as a way to manage that. But you want to get people talking to each other. And you may have to manage it a little bit. I think Chris was sharing some strategies. I was sharing some strategies. The other thing that I think Rotarians are exceptionally skilled at, because they probably do this in every aspect of their life, that's what makes them leaders, is problem solving. And anything we're talking about, if we relate it to a real challenge, a real Rotary challenge, and give them a nugget to chew on, it's much more meaty and interesting of a meal than it just is if it's just in the abstract. So giving them an opportunity to think about something or share a previous problem, and hearing the strategies, those are great ways to get people to share their best thinking or to get engaged with the material. And sometimes you can frame a problem as an opportunity, so it doesn't feel like it's a negative conversation. You don't need to go into the negative pieces, but it still has that juiciness. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. And then using interactive tools.
Did I see Tim start to put his hand
Yeah.
up?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. Thank you.
Yeah, Amy,
Yeah.
and I may be getting ahead of you a little bit, but I really like this concept. And I'm thinking ahead to the getting together in January and I've got 4 president-elects.
Yep.
I really like the idea of very early on, and when we get together, having 2 and 2 get together and talk about 1 or 2 things that we want to get it from them together, so that they can talk together and come together with their ideas, and then report back, and then have another question and split them up again differently, and then that way we can get them to know each other as well as answer some of the things we want to get out of that session. So I don't know if I'm leading you to what do we want out of the January session besides getting to know them better, which I know I need to do that. What do we want to get out of that session? So,
well, one thing that I put in my email that I don't want you to be the teacher giving the students a test during, all right, class, what did you learn on page 14?
Right.
Because we're going to test you. What I want you to do is be more inspirational and prepare them. Now that you've been through these classes, and between you and me and the fence post, probably everybody doesn't take every class, but that's our dream. What are you excited about? That would be one question. What are you concerned about? What are you worried about? And you're right, Tim, you're building a network between them and each other, which is really, really, that's the biggest value you get out of
right.
pets or anything else, is you've got resources in each other as well as their assistant governor. So,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I
Yeah.
couldn't hold myself back.
No, that's exactly the type of thing I wanted to hear and to be thinking about, because I think that those are very good and will make it a much more fruitful session.
Right, right. It won't put them on the spot if they
Right.
didn't do
Right.
it. They don't
Right.
get a gold star if they did. But what the whole purpose of those virtual classes is to get them thinking about the big picture of what is the role of a president of a club.
Right.
What are you responsible for? You're responsible for quite a bit. And so now, what's one thing that you're concerned about when you break them up into smaller groups? That's an excellent way to get them, sharing that.
Right. Right.
So one can cover, oh, well, I'm a little bit concerned about my membership. Well, even if the other one didn't, study it as much as they should have, they might say, yeah, I'm concerned about my membership too. So that just gives them something to build on.
Perfect. And right on, I think you're thinking in the way that we want you to be thinking about this. And I would encourage folks to remember what it was like to be a president-elect and to be in this learning environment. And, I think here's the little secret. Chris, hold your hands over yours for a second. All your governors, when you are an assistant governor, will do this a little differently. And the governors-elect preparing their presidents-elect will do this a little differently. So this year, Chris is doing it a little differently than Nelson did it last year, and the year before that with Jim Polk. And I did it a little differently. We all are doing it a little differently. Sometimes it's based on the governor's strengths and needs. Sometimes it's based on the needs of the presidents and the clubs in the current time. Maybe we're rolling out for the new action plan or something like that. So there's more effort around that. It'll be different, but what won't be different is the experience of a president or a president-elect and what it's like to come into this learning thing a little unsure. And the other thing that I think won't be different is the importance of relationships and that interdependency. It's a work smarter thing to make these connections. And I'm still good friends with people I went to Pets with 13 years ago. It's been a minute. And many of those people went on to do district leadership things with me, and we have become very connected, and we were each other's resources. And so sometimes my first call wasn't my assistant governor, it was my fellow president and saying, are you running into this? What are you doing around that? And sometimes it was in that group meeting where I would bring it to the group meeting with my other presidents and my assistant governors and talk about those things, because my area meets with both assistant governors. So building those relationships, giving them opportunity to build them together is really smart. because you won't have every answer. And you also don't have all the time in the world. So teaching them to be interdependent and not look to you for everything is okay and good. The other piece that's on here is using interactive tools as a facilitator. Also thinking about adult learners and the memory and the aging thing I was talking about, using whiteboards and flip charts and digital tools to help us come back to the things in our parking lot, for example, recording meetings so you can watch it later, using Zoom, like I said, to share desktops and see each other's screens, things like that. You have a lot of tools, and hopefully you're getting familiar. We're going to talk about specific online tools at the end, so I'm not going to talk much about them now, but you can do old school things, use Post-its, pencil and paper are still useful tools to helping get people engaged. So handing them, piece of paper and make some bullet points about things that you're concerned about as a president to help them organize their thinking. That kind of thing is still a good facilitation strategy. All right, next. Here's a couple of key things about engaging the adult brains, right? So I think we've talked about this a lot, but I can't say it enough. Connecting them to real life situations. So relating what you're teaching them to their roles in Rotary. So I love that Chris's assignment to the presidents-elect is within the Learning Center. So it's going to be very connected to what they're going to be doing, but it's really specific to their role. So we're not just going to all the members saying, get on Learning Center. This is a specific role, a specific learning content that's related. So the likelihood of them doing it goes up just by having that connection and desire. You want to be the best president you can be? Here's one way to get you started. Again, acknowledging the experience that people have and the wealth of knowledge they bring. Maybe they've never been a leader in their club before, but they are probably a leader somewhere else. And maybe they've done leadership roles. If they've never taken on the front of the room leadership, it's okay to connect to, you've been a project manager or something like that to help them relate what they're doing in Rotary to other experiences they've had. And make sure you're just inviting of it, that you give them positive feedback and praise. People love to hear they're doing a good job. Or my favorite thing that facilitators do are that's a really great point. I've never thought about it like that. And I love to be told that I'm asking good questions, because first of all, I'm making myself vulnerable by asking a question, and I don't like that. Most people don't. And so when I ask a question, sometimes I'll put the caveat in front of it. Well, maybe this is something you've already said, or maybe this isn't the smartest question. I hate to say it's a stupid question, but what if I did? You could say, no, really, that's a great question. I bet a lot of people have that question. That's very validating, and I'm going to be more likely to ask you questions in the future. And then that respectful environment, creating space where all the voices are heard. This is also tricky in Rotary because, especially in our current situation in our country, we are very divided. Even regardless of the political spectrum, just how people vote shows up pretty even, that there is a big spectrum of thoughts and ideas, and there is some division. And so I can't assume that everyone in this room thinks the way that I do, votes the way that I do, has the same experiences I do, has the same lens with which they view the world, just because we all belong to this incredible service organization. And sometimes I get lost in that, because in the heart of us, we're all humanitarians, but how that plays out can look different. And so we need to make sure that not only are we being respectful and facilitating respectful communication in our groups, but that they're doing that. And so I feel like the question at the end of the day is, what would the kind person do? What would the kind person say right now? And so hopefully that will get us where we need to go, but it will come up. It does come up. I don't know what that will look like. I just know it will happen. It happened when I was governor. It happened when I was an assistant governor. It happened when I was a club president. I can give you one quick example. When I was a club president, my club meets Tuesday nights, and one of my members of the clubs, you all know Heather Edwards. I love her very much. She was born on Veterans Day. It's her birthday. And her father is retired military. And so he and she always have a beverage together and on Veterans Day in celebration of her birthday and his service. And so that happened to fall on a Tuesday night when I was club president. And so he was there and they were having their cocktail before our meeting. And she came in and said, you know, in honor of Veterans Day, could we sing America the Beautiful? We're not a singing club. We don't say the Pledge of Allegiance. We are pretty non-traditional in those respects. And so I said, sure, why not? And so we sang America the Beautiful in honor of her father's service and other members of the club. And meeting carried on. I got a 3-page email the next day from someone in my club saying all the reasons why we shouldn't recognize Veterans Day. We should be celebrating Armistice Day and all these other things. So you never know what's going to happen. And that was an opportunity for connection with that person, and an opportunity for me to also talk about the variety of people who are in Rotary and how it's okay to have a different perspective and just, you know, anyway. So that's one example of how these things will happen. And we just had to navigate them kindly and respectfully, even when we disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have examples of that you want to share, Chris or Joe or anybody?
No.
During our membership forums, I decided that we wanted to talk about DEI, but I didn't want DEI's got some stigma to it, political stigma in some ways. So I decided to call it making your members comfortable or something like that. The discussion ended up being whether or not we should have a flag salute in our club meetings. And where we went with that, and I was a little worried about that once we got into that discussion that it was going to get confrontational. It really didn't. You know, everybody was respectful. And my purpose during that forum was not to make a president's decision for them or a membership chair's position make their decision for them, but just to give them a heads up that some clubs are not having it. My own club says, if you are so willing, will you rise and have the Pledge of Allegiance with me? But there are some people that come and visit clubs that may not be American, citizens of the United States, and they're not comfortable. One of the women that is a district governor from another district wanted to weigh in on this. She says, my husband's Canadian. So when I did my visitations, I took my husband with me, and most clubs did the Pledge of Allegiance. And she said, they just told her husband, oh, don't worry about it, just don't do it, which he didn't. But he said he got the side eye a lot from members. How comes you're not doing this? So it's just something as Rotarians, we have to be as respectful as we can and acknowledge that everybody doesn't feel the same way. Just to piggyback on what Amy's saying, and I think I heard somebody else start to chime in. Patrick, was it you? No? Okay.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody else? I think this is a good example of a conversation you could be having with your presidents-elect and having a conversation around club culture and inclusive cultures and things. This is coming up a lot. The year that I was governor was the first full year back from COVID. So we spent a lot of time talking about meeting locations and costs of dues because of what had happened to clubs during COVID. And so there was a lot of discussion around those things. It's going to be organic to what's happening in your clubs, but these challenges around how we grow and modernize our issues of membership that will come up over and over again. So be prepared for them. Also, I think it's important to remember that you don't have to have an answer. You just have to create an opportunity for people to have discussion. And then maybe there's answers that they will be led to on their own, or you'll come up with something together, but you don't need to solve every problem. And sometimes we can't solve every problem, and we just need to acknowledge that this is something we're going to have to wait and see how things go. When you're doing problem solving, that's an important thing to know. Some things we can't change. or we don't know all the information, so we're going to have to hang tight for a little bit. And that's uncomfortable as humans. We like to add answers. And every time I've done that, when I wasn't sure, I always got in trouble. So I always made a mess of it. So just take it from me to be careful when you're answering things you don't know for sure. All right, so we've already talked a little bit about this, so this is a little bit of review. There are lots of interactive methods to engage your adult learners using examples or case studies, the role play thing we talked about, and the peer learning, that think, pair, share, group discussion, giving them facilitated groups, giving them table topics, having a question of the day, different things like that will help them engage. I'd like to give some information about how to role play. I'm not going to expect us to role play today, but you might practice facilitating a discussion on a topic, having one facilitator and one participant, and then getting feedback on the facilitation skills. This is a great way to practice role play. And then always give them a positive environment in which to do that. So, you're looking for opportunities to give constructive and positive feedback when people are facilitating. But we want our leaders and our presidents-elect to learn how to do the same thing that we're talking to you about. So you're going to be the conduit by which they learn to do that. They're going to be facilitating board meetings, committee meetings, running their club meetings, and they're going to need to remember all these things that we're talking to you about today around adult learning and how we engage our volunteer, and especially volunteers. It's a much different ballgame when you're talking about employees versus volunteers, people who are paid. And then I just want to reiterate these 3 key points before we jump into our online tools. Adult learning is self-directed. They learn best when they're in control. Facilitators guide, not teach. We focus on discussion and not lecture. And engagement is the key to making it all work. We have to make our learning relevant and interactive. Okay, so now let's get into the online tools. So DACdb is the first tool that we like to talk about, and making sure that folks have their current email address and that they have the ability to log in and out. And you have some authority as assistant governors to manage some of those things. So I'm hopeful that you're confident in doing that. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and ask you if you have specific questions about DACdb that I can talk to you about, or if I should just jump right in.
Amy?
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
I use the DACdb both on my laptop and on the phone.
Yes.
And what's on the laptop is not the same as what's available on the phone.
Are you using the app or are you using just a web browser?
Well, I had downloaded the app.
Okay.
And I find that I can't find on the phone what I'm easily can find on the computer. Maybe it's my own problem.
You might be using the mobile version on your phone.
I think you're right. I think that's probably what I do.
You can download the whole version like this. What's showing now on your phone, it's really wee dinky to try to see anything. The mobile app is nice if you just want to know somebody's phone number and call them.
It's very handy. I agree. But there are some things I can't find that I know I can find on the computer.
It is limited. I have heard that it's gotten better. I stopped using it. I found it very dissatisfying. I'd rather use my fingers and shrink and enlarge the screen to see what I want to see so that I get this functionality if I'm doing anything beyond trying to get a phone number. Also, I would recommend not doing anything but beyond trying to get a phone number on your phone. That this is a complex database. And I'm listening to my husband, who is a database engineer, does this for a living, talk about all of the challenges with this database regularly. And he acknowledges to me all the time that it's not the easiest interface. So you have to remember that for non-technical people, this can sometimes be a significant barrier. However, there's so much really great functionality in it. So for your presidents-elect, the things that are really, I think, important is the homepage has a lot of information for intra-club information. but most of that comes out to them in the newsletter. So that's not going to be as key as the things like clicking on the district page and getting to the calendar. And do you know that you can reorder these? Do you see me dragging things around? You can reorder those. So teaching them that they can put the things that they need the most up front so that they don't get overwhelmed is also a good strategy. So you can see that probably the most important thing I click on these days is the calendar and events. So it's right up here. Clubs is also right up here. This is a great place to show them where all the clubs are listed and how they can click around and see things. And they may not see the same things you see if they have different access levels. So remember that. That's why that opportunity for them to show you what they're seeing and to let them direct. So the way that people get better at using DACdb is by using it. So if you just get in there and do it for them, they aren't going to get the practice. So having them sit at their machine and then click on things is going to be the way they learn. And that's really hard for me as a teacher. I'm more used to doing hand over hand. So holding myself back and letting people do that themselves is always tricky, but it's important. So showing them how to get to the events and how to toggle different things on and off here is important so they can find things easily. So I often have district events scheduled, selected, excuse me, so that I can find the things that I'm looking for. There's a lot of great tools to email folks and find data here. Any specific questions about DACdb, Chris, or anyone that you want me to answer for you?
This probably won't happen, but what if the people don't know how to get on DACdb? They wouldn't have their password, or
right.
Where do we
That's always the biggest.
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So if you find them, so let's find me, we'll just say, let's find Amy Walsh. Here I am. So if we click on Amy, you can see different aspects of who I am. But if we go, let me go back. Hold on one second. You just get the information, but I don't have to go back. I can hit edit member. So I can edit the member, and then I can see things like the login. And this is a great strategy. I think you all have access to this at the assistant governor level, so you think you should be able to see it. If you can't and you need help with it, your governor line will help you. I can help you. You can't see their password, but you can change. I think you can edit their password at some security levels. I have the ability to edit someone's password. I'm not sure about AG's. I'm sorry. It's been a minute since I was at that level. So if you can't edit their password, then asking a district leader to help you, a club secretary, I think, can edit it. But this is where a lot of the barriers when Joe and I were meeting with folks one-on-one was happening. They had old email addresses. They didn't know their password. So you can click here to email their login username, and then they can request a new password and do that process. And you can facilitate that this way. But checking this to make sure it's correct is really important. I would also encourage you to encourage them. And if you don't already, have a Rotary specific email address. A lot of the barriers we have to DACdb are people have email accounts through their work or through other places that don't accept emails. They get rejected. And so making sure that folks have the ability to get the P-mails is really important. People don't know what they don't know. So if they have a Rotary specific email through a free account like Gmail or something, it's a really great way to ensure they're getting them. And they're also going into one spot where they can conveniently find things. Yes, it means one more email to a check. Often you can do automatic forwarding and things like that to consolidate. So if you email David Walsh, he gets all of his different email accounts filtered into one thing. He's got it all structured. We can do things like that. So this is really important and a great question, Tim. It came up a lot and it solved a lot of problems. Also, DACdb feeds RLI. So Rotary Club Central, which is what we're going to talk about next, has the same email address as what your DACdb has when someone enrolled you in membership. Now, you may have changed it. You may have changed DACdb, but DACdb only updates RLI so often. So it's not every time. So if I change my email today in DACdb, my RLI email will not have changed. So that's important to know. Any other questions about DACdb before I get into RLI? Yeah. Joe.
Amy, you said you
And then
mentioned, excuse me.
No, go, Joe, and then Ed. Sorry.
You mentioned, you said changing RLI. Did you mean the RI?
Yeah, sorry. I did say RLI. You're right. I am working on the curriculum for RLI, true confession. So that's Freudian. It's on my brain right now. Yes, I meant RI.
Okay, and another question, second question. I have not explored anything with DACdb about its learning university or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Or is there a program within DACdb that takes a beginner and gives them increasing skills?
There is, and it's the university, like you were talking about, has those classes. You can click on them. I find them to be a little overwhelming for the basic user. So I'm actually working on recording a Zoom that will that'll just be me talking through DACdb a little bit that we're going to share with members and club presidents. So I'm working on that. I was hoping to have it so I could debut it for you all, but I really hate listening to myself, so I'm still working on it. David said it sounded okay, but I'm still working on it. And part of what's happening is when you give me specific questions, I can make sure I use them in the video to talk through the things that are coming up for people. But I want it to be like a 3-minute video. Here's the top things to navigate DACdb that you need to know as a club member, and then a couple minutes more if you're a club president. But I think the club secretaries are a great resource. And one of the things that I want to make sure is happening at CLA is that they're getting some training around supporting other people also. And then we'll keep editing those videos. But I hope to have that ready before January so that you can share it with your club presidents. But they can also go to the university sessions. And if you are accessing DACdb, you get the emails sometimes. And they're changing DACdb. So some of those things may change in the near future. They've sold DACdb. I don't know if people are aware of that, and it's going to be updated a bit. We'll see what that means. So I know I want to be mindful of time, so I'm going to jump over to my Rotary if folks are okay. Chris, you're muted.
Ed, did you have a question? Or did you ask it?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Okay.
You can also reach out to me with specific questions that are coming up for you. I would love to have a bank of questions for the video that we're working on. So if you have specific things that have come up with your clubs or your presidents or for you that you think would be helpful, please email me or call me. And I'd be happy to take those in and incorporate them into the video because we want it to be the most useful. And like I said, I don't know what I don't know. So help me, please. Okay, so my Rotary. My login for my DACdb and my Rotary are typically the same. So people usually will log in the same way. And they may need help signing in. They may have to reset their password. That's always something that comes up. Having them practice that before you give them assignments, stuff like that. Hopefully they're doing that stuff now because Chris is asking them to get into the Learning Center. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, so I'm signing in. And people will always complain about the RI site, and it's fair. It definitely has bugs and kinks. It has gotten infinitely better than it was even 5 years ago. And so I feel like they've invested incredible effort into the design and the functionality of it, and it will continue to get better. But we have to give them feedback. We have to let them know. So constructive feedback is really key. If you run into situations that you can't figure out, asking for help is good. Calling the 800 number is a great strategy. They'll talk you through a lot of things. So my Rotary and their account, like updating, there's the whole place that I talked about where they can find their donations and do all the editing around that. The Learning Center and Brand Center are the other two pieces that I think they have to know. We want them comfortable with the Brand Center, but don't start there. We're starting with the Learning Center and all of the ways that they can learn. And then they're going to need to be familiar with Rotary Club Central. So here's the link to the Learning Center, and here's the link to the Rotary Club Central. At some point, people may need to know if their club is doing grants. They may already have some experience with the Grant Center also, but those are the kind of key places. Did you see where I clicked to get to that under Knowledge and Resources? So if you haven't spent some time here, then I would encourage you to do so. I think the Learning Center is actually really useful. It's gotten better and better. And what I love about the Learning Center is that it's self-directed and self-guided. So you can spend as much time as you want or go as fast as you want through the content. But if you are already a Rotary expert, like many of you are, and you've done all of this content and you know this stuff, there are still worksheets and links to different tools that are constantly being developed that are very useful. And you can see it's taking a minute to load. It's a little bit slow sometimes. Sometimes I have to go back and reload it. There we go. So there are lots of different courses. There's specific.
Right there is the club leadership. That's where they find theirs.
Yep. So they're going to come here, and Chris is asking them to take these courses.
Two, Club President Basic, Club President Intermediate, right in the top there.
Yep, and you can see like you're enrolled or not enrolled. It's been a minute, so I'm not enrolled in these classes anymore. But then once they're enrolled, once they click the enroll button, they default to the top of the screen. They don't have to go hunting for the courses.
Can we check to see if they're enrolled?
We do get a learning report. I think Chris is probably getting the learning report and I'm getting the learning report, so I can check what people's access are. I don't know if assistant governors can check. Let me find out about
I
that.
don't want to be a babysitter, but everybody tells me they are, but I just want to check, just want to be sure.
Yeah, so
Well, ask them how far they've made it through, because
Okay.
most of the courses are in 15-minute to half-hour increments.
Right.
There's one or two that are 45 or an hour or something like that. So it's self-paced, but ask them how far they're making it through. And so, if they say they're enrolled and they're halfway through, I'm not going to go verify and send them a nasty letter if they haven't.
No, but they do get certificates and things like that.
Yes.
They'll know that they've completed it. Obviously, you can see your status of the courses. I've been playing with these classes off and on for years, so they're various progress. It charts your progress. It tells you where you are. You have as much time as you need to do this. You can come back to it anytime. So this one about getting started with the Learning Center is a great one for everyone to take, which helps them orient themselves. And then what ends up happening is they start to get curious. So if you want to hook them, ask them things that they're interested in. So are they nervous about speaking in front of their club? Well, there's a Toastmasters course for you. Yeah. Do you worry about conflict among your club members? Is communication skills something that's worrisome? There's content around that. Do you have a pocket program for when somebody doesn't show up as club president? You're going to be on the spot when you don't have a speaker. Do you have access to a program? There's sessions on developing programs and sample programs that you can find. You might just have to show a video that day, and you might have access to that because of the Learning Center. So there's lots of things there, like how to talk to your members about their donations and managing their grants and all of the different youth exchange. There's a ton of things like that. So make sure they're familiar with those things. So Chris, you've asked them to do President, Basics, and Intermediate, right?
Right. And I have a contractor that just showed up, so I have to bail.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to add before you go real quickly?
You're doing great, Amy. I really appreciate your guiding through this, and I'll watch the video. Plus, I'll be at the Thursday one. So
yeah, we'll see you guys. Then. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you. I want to be mindful of everybody's time, but I quickly wanted just to show Rotary Club Central really quick, if you're okay with that, because this is where the goals are and one of the areas that you're going to be asked to help your club presidents. So let's go back to my Rotary. I'm going to leave the Learning Center. Oh, there we go. So Rotary Club Central requires another login. It's the same login as the RI page, my Rotary page. It defaulted me to Club Central and didn't make me log in again. I don't know if that's because I was just here yesterday or if how often it's making folks do that. So it may not go this fast. There are goals across the spectrum down here. So you can see that there are the 4 categories around the action plan, that the goals are divided up, and then all the goals are here. Also, they can go through the different years. So it's important that they pay attention to what year they're in to edit goals or to look at previous goals. You can see the history of the goals. So right now I'm in my Metro Club goals. You can probably see more than you, I think as an assistant governor, you can see all your area club goals. Joe's nodding. So Joe's done this more. It's been a bit since I haven't been able to access all of them. So you can toggle through what club you're looking at and help them see what the goals are for specific areas. And then there are resources that they can get step-by-step guide on how to do these things. So don't reinvent the wheel. Don't come up with your own guide. Like go look at the resources to see if somebody's already done it for you. So how do you set a goal in Rotary Club Central? We actually give them this handout. If I click on that hyperlink, does everybody know what a hyperlink is? When you hold your cursor over it, it changes and highlights it, and it's going to take you somewhere else. So when I click on it, my screen changes. So that's important. It will take you to that document. And sometimes all it does is download the document. So it automatically downloaded right there. That was the page. It didn't take me to a new page. So I just want everybody to know that sometimes the new page it takes you to is just to download the document. It's not going to open the document automatically. So getting them to My Rotary Club is really important. Rotary Club Central and My Rotary. Those things are very important for what's going to happen by the time we get to PELS. So that's all I have for you today. I want to make sure that I have answered any questions, but you can also reach out to me anytime. I hope you actually do so that I can get additional questions into the video I'm making.
Just one comment on that video, Amy.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. And I really believe that it's done properly. It should be a red badge requirement for every new member to break down the barriers of this DACdb.
No pressure though, Tim, no pressure.
I really, because we have, as a red badge requirement, we have log in, go into DACdb and log in, but that stops there. Doesn't say go do anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that Joe and I have talked about several times. There's a big fear, especially among us older people, of going into these technology things and learning them. And it's such a great tool that I was forced to learn through the grant process, but I'm so glad that I did. I'm
so glad you did too. And stuff happens. I mean, I recently got a panic phone call while David and I were in the airport. The club secretary had accidentally deleted a member, and fortunately, we taught her how to go back and reactivate them. She terminated a member. Sorry. We were able to reactivate them, and it required some additional work and communication with RI to find out what their actual start date was and things like that. But we were able to get it back up. So you can mess things up, but for the most part, things can be recreated. So it's a pretty safe environment to play in.
Okay. So thanks,
you,
Amy.
Tim. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or?
Amy?
Yes.
Just a comment back on DACdb. That program and the database it's very clunky.
Yes.
And so it takes a lot of learning and experience to get comfortable with it.
Sure.
So just everyone, new to it just needs to know that going in that you're just not going to learn it all.
No.
Just go into the basics, the things that you need the most.
Right.
One of the things that you need the most is P-mail.
Yep.
Especially the officers of the club, presidents, as well as presidents-elect. Mm-hmm. And P-mail the function is pretty sloppy, and it's easy to get frustrated with it. So that may be one thing, Amy, that could be
On the list. Yeah,
a
yeah.
point of focus is how do you use Pmail in the most efficient way? I still stumble. I've been working with it for years now, as long as I used DACdb.
Yeah,
It's just
lots of learning and trial and error with Pmail. You know, the thing that I
yes,
learned when I was helping Claudette when she was governor was to not write in the email window of browse to like type in Word,
yes.
because if you somehow screw it up, it doesn't save.
You start all over.
Yep, yep. And it doesn't have the best editing ability, you know, so spell check and things like that might work, but might not. So I use my word processing, which I use Microsoft Word, and then I paste it in to the browser whenever I do it. Then I have a record, I have an email record that's saved, but I also have the access to the email itself that I created so that if I want to send it different ways. Joe's excited to say something.
Yeah, this is one of my pet peeves with Pmail as well. Finding myself getting late into the evening with a big email, and sometimes I get too wordy, uh, and I and I try to edit things carefully before I actually hit send. Um, but sometimes the fingers move and hit the
Yes,
wrong keys,
yes.
and suddenly the program is gone. And what I've discovered lately is that I can go back into DACdb and back into Pmail, and then I forget if it's a pull down menu on the left hand margin, but you can go back to drafts.
Yeah,
I
it's
did
hit or
not
miss
know
though, Joe. It doesn't have them all.
I did not know that
Yeah.
until recently. It has saved my bacon several times in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I still recommend creating it elsewhere and copying and pasting it. But yes,
That's
it does.
I've done that
And
often.
it will let you see the report of who's opened and stuff. And so, and it lets you resend an email to people who haven't opened it, things like that. So talking about how to use Pmail might be its own session, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's probably necessary.
Okay, good point. And club presidents will use Pmail for their club, I hope. I mean, a lot of when I was club president, we had a email list that I just used. But if you get a new member, someone changes their email address, it's not always functional. So the theory behind using Pmail is that it's the most updated way to connect with people if we use the database correctly. Any other DACdb stuff?
Yeah, I've got one just
Okay.
random. You pointed out district newsletters earlier, and has one been created this year?
There are newsletters coming out. I think I don't know that they're coming out. Actually, I don't know if they've come out for a bit. I've been
I
traveling,
looked. Yeah,
but
I looked at, and it doesn't look like it's been updated at
yeah,
all this year.
so it's complicated year to year when committee folks change. So last year Dan was doing them and Dan has stepped away. And so Heather's been helping a bit, but I'm not sure what the status is. And honestly, I've been traveling and I'm really behind in email, so I haven't noticed in a bit. But one of the things we were trying to do with the new website, and they've been doing a website update, so I don't know how much that's still happening, is anybody who was using a DACdb website it's promoting on that landing page. So if you click on the home tab, you see a lot of things from clubs who have connected. So we see a lot of Redmond, we see a lot of Delta and Southtown, Metro, I think Springfield. You know, it depends on the club. If they're using a DACdb site, it was meant to remember it was during my year, it was meant to foster connection between clubs because that was one of the things that people were really missing after COVID. And so that landing page is automatically populated by club newsletters that are created in DACdb. So that's still happening. I'm not sure what's happening with the district news right now. It's a great question for Nelson or Chris. But I think they're working really hard to build out that PI team, and that's a full gig. So if you have people who are skilled in newsletters, who might want to help at the district level, we have a twofold need. We have content generators that we need people who are getting articles to the team, and then you need people who are just managing the delivery of the content. And so we've made it so anybody can add to the website when they have a story, and then that would automatically feed the district news. But I don't know how many people are actually doing that. Rotarians are not good at telling their story, as you know.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for letting me run a little over. I really appreciate you showing up and participating. Hopefully this was helpful to you. And if you think of anything or have other questions, I'm always here. Hopefully I'm almost done with the RLI curriculum and we'll get back to a little more other training. We have CLA and PELS coming up, two big training opportunities. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Amy.
Hey, bye.
Happy holidays.